Hi there. Just a quick reminder that if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you download the Improving My Wellbeing and Finding Balance podcast activity booklet via www.thewellbeingcollective.co.uk/free resources. From this, you will be able to follow along with the visuals whilst listening to Amy in the following episode.
Here we have our emotions flower. And you can see that the 6 core emotions are at the centre, and then different feelings connected to the core emotion splay out from that, like the petals of a flower. So to help explain this, I thought it might be useful to give you a couple of examples. And the first example that I'd like to talk through with you starts at the centre, because that's often the way that people use this model. So the person that I'm thinking of talked to me about feeling empowered and feeling powerful at the moment in their role. And they weren't talking about power in terms of controlling other people. They were just talking about feeling like where they worked right now, that they were much more empowered than they had been before. And so we looked at the emotions flower and we started thinking about if they felt empowered right now, why might that be? What's in the next layer round were the feelings that jumped out at them. And so when we talked about that, the person said to me that they felt respected and valued, and that they recognised that the sense of empowerment they had right now was because other people around them, particularly their line manager and other leaders, were treating them with real respect and also valuing them for who they were, but also for their contribution. And we then moved out to the next stage and talked about, and what was the impact of that? What were the feelings associated with being respected? And they said that they felt like they were achieving, they were successful. And as a result, they were doing better in work. They were achieving different things and they felt successful. And so we reflected that their core emotion was to feel empowered, to feel powerful. But there was a string of other really important and, for this person, positive emotions that connected with that. And they hadn't necessarily linked them together. They hadn't actively sat down and thought that the reason why they were being so successful at the moment was because that they were empowered and valued and respected by people around them, and that that was having quite an impact on their well-being. So you can see that you can look at this flower for yourself and think, how am I feeling right now? If they had a core emotion, what would it be? And you can then move outwards slowly, recognising any associated feelings. And they may be the ones that we've got here, but it could also be that there are many other emotions, as we'd learnt earlier, that you might want to recognise and say that's how you're feeling. So another example is starting from the outside in. And sometimes we notice things that are actually not a core emotion, but they're something that you find it easier to recognise and identify for yourself. So somebody else that I was working with a while ago was talking about feeling really overwhelmed and a sense of not being able to keep their head above water and finding it very difficult to cope because of these senses of feeling overwhelmed. And so we looked at the flower, and we then looked at that second layer in and started talking about which of the emotions here really jumped out at them. And they said, do you know, it's because I feel really helpless. I hadn't recognised that what was happening at work right now was that I feel I have no control over things, that I can't shift things, I can't make things better. And so the sense of feeling helpless was building up in a practical way of being overwhelmed and not being able to do all the things on the to-do list. But it was feeling helpless that was leading to a sense of not being able to get everything done. And then we moved in again and we looked at the core emotion. And this was where a real shift happened for the individual, because they recognised that that core emotion was fear. They were scared. And we explored and talked about what was making them feel scared. And it was the sense that everything was changing for them at work so much that they were scared of not being able to do a good job. They were scared for the future. They were scared that they might lose their job. And that led them to feel totally helpless. And then in day-to-day activities, really overwhelmed and unable to prioritise. And you can see that that person's well-being was massively affected. And although the symptom was being overwhelmed by too many tasks, the core was feeling really scared that everything was going to fall apart. So this diagram, this flower, is something that you can use in different ways. Sometimes it can be helpful just to have a range of feelings that are written down that you might not necessarily be able to name. There's somebody else that I work with who actually said that they only really ever felt okay or not okay, happy or not happy. And it was only when we used the feelings flower, the emotions flower, that they were able to say, oh my goodness, there's a whole range of things in here that I do think I feel sometimes. And that when I'm not okay, maybe it's for a number of reasons. So you can use this flower in lots of different ways. And remember, it changes every time you do it, because how you're feeling today may not be the same as how you were feeling earlier or yesterday even.